Hello there. So we just had Godzilla x Kong Supernova revealed to us in the last few hours, and there are already so many theories floating around online. And actually, surprisingly, in this trailer, you would be surprised to find out that there's a lot of hidden Easter eggs that tease what is to come in this movie that allow us to piece together the plot quite a bit more than you might think, or at least have some really heavy theories with some really strong evidence about what is coming in Godzilla x Kong Supernova. Now, on a side note, I do want to say that objectively, I do kind of feel like the title is like a little corny, even as I say it out loud. However, I am extremely excited for this movie, far more excited than I was for Godzilla vs. Kong and Godzilla x Kong The New Empire, because I think that in this movie, we are getting, at the bare minimum, a cosmic villain, but hopefully the MonsterVerse version of Space Godzilla, whether or not that is the actual trademarked monster from Toho adapted into the MonsterVerse, or their own version and spin on the character, kind of like Shimo, because I think with the success and popularity of Shimo's character, that leads us into Godzilla x Kong Supernova, with them wanting to follow the money and introduce another original Titan, and then also avoid having to pay for trademarks, as well as the possibility of that leaking out, because if they have to buy the trademark for the character, we are eventually going to find that out in some sort of leak, being that at some point before the film, we're going to find out that Legendary bought the trademark from Toho. So we're going to have to see how things unfold, but in this video, we're breaking down the trailer at 0.25x speed and getting into some deep details for Godzilla x Kong Supernova that I haven't seen a lot of people talk about on other channels. So we're getting into it in this video. If you guys enjoy my MonsterVerse content, consider subscribing, and let's do it.
The Atomic Fair.
Okay, so as we start this trailer, we open up at what looks to be a Monarch facility as they are tracking down Titans as they seem to be erupting for some sort of reason. Now, whether or not this is a call from space or whatever this is, we're going to find out later, but it does seem like they are tracking down and potentially hunting Titans if we want to tie this to earlier leaks for this film that have come out in the last month or so. Whether or not that ends up being real, we'll have to find out. But what's really interesting about these opening shots that I haven't seen a lot of people talk about is what is on these TV screens. Now, we have a newscast in the middle. On the bottom, it looks like a bunch of tracking for the various Titans, and then in the middle screen, we have what looks to be a bunch of glowing pyramids. Now, this is crazy stuff to see in the MonsterVerse, because for me, this definitely signals a very, very heavy possibility of Space Godzilla showing up in these movies, considering the fact that Space Godzilla has very pyramid-looking crystals that he harnesses as his power. Additionally, they look to be charged with Hollow Earth energy, so it's a very interesting shot there, and something that I have not seen a lot of people talk about that really sets up the villain in a big way. This is either Space Godzilla or a MonsterVerse version of this character, and I think that's what we're seeing here, is these pyramids pulsing and radiating. Maybe they're even the Egyptian pyramids, and sending out some sort of signal to space. I think that could even coincide back to the Egyptian fight in Godzilla x Kong The New Empire. Perhaps something happened when they opened up the Hollow Earth that causes this conflict to happen, because a lot of things that happen in previous MonsterVerse movies lead up to things we see in subsequent sequels, and that's been a big theme of the MonsterVerse, very similar to the Marvel films. Now, of course, we see what looks to be a bunch of Monarch workers kind of scrambling and working very hard to track down these Titans, as what looks to be an emergency is happening, or some kind of world-ending crisis is potentially going on. Now, this TV screen and this desk is where we're going to get the most bits of information for this movie. Of course, we see a Godzilla Funko Pop here on one side, and we also see a mug on the other side that says "Keep Kong and Carry On," which is kind of funny. A little cutesy little mug there. Perhaps that's something that they'll end up selling when the film comes out. Now, what's interesting is this sticky note that's next to this computer here, which seems to say GSX03262027, and it seems to be a login code, but but what's very funny is that's actually the release date for the film, and then we also see some other little cutesy stuff on the desk and what looks to be some pictures of this person's family. But what's interesting is this computer screen. That's where we get the most information about this. Now, the location that we're looking at is Sedona, Arizona, and that is actually where Scylla erupted in the Monsterverse. So that could possibly mean that Scylla returns in this movie, and that in fact some of the stuff that we heard about Scylla being alive in the Titan that we see in Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire being a totally different Titan, it could be true, guys, if what we're seeing here on the screen ends up being another emergence of Scylla. This Scylla that we saw in Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire, which even official toys are named Scylla, has a very different look to the Scylla that we saw in the comics. Perhaps it's like a overall name for the species or something, I'm not really sure, or it's another Titan emerging in Sedona, Arizona. There's an event report here with a response code that says 10-31, a dispatcher named Armin with the ID 9520-2, and what looks to say location of service and undefined. Now, when we move over to these sets of numbers here, what it actually says was Dan Stevens' post, which is Godzilla and Kong watch this space. It's a very big callback to the post that Dan Stevens made, which we now know was actually signaling space coming to this next film. There's of course what looks to be a dispatch or a Discord conversation going on here, or at least a chat box, a direct message board that says ready for another thrilling day of your call is very important to us. So there's a little conversation there that you can go ahead and read that's really kind of funny. But what's interesting here too is the bottom, where we have some characters named Trapper, Eileen Andrews, Helen Hampton, Rick Stanton, and Jay Jorgensen. Now, some of these characters are returning characters from previous films, and some of these other characters are characters that we've seen in previous Monsterverse projects as well. So it seems like this movie is set to have a pretty large cast of characters. Now, what is extremely interesting to me about this trailer as well is something that you see here on the bottom on this piece of paper. Now, it is very, very hard to make out, so I don't know exactly what we're looking at, but you can kind of make out what looks to be a head that looks like the head of Godzilla, with a little body, with little arms, a little tail, and little legs. Now, what we could potentially be looking at here, and I feel like y'all already fucking know what I'm gonna say, man, but it could be Godzilla, a tease of Godzilla Jr. coming to the Monsterverse. That's been a big thing that's been being set up or talked about in leaks and reports and things rooting back to Adam Wingard, who said he wanted to take inspiration from Godzilla vs. Destroy and have a deep emotional story arc for Godzilla. So a lot of people have been thinking that they're gonna follow that track by bringing in Godzilla Jr. And I don't know, man, I'm like looking at this and I'm trying to like come up with what else that could mean. It could just be a bullshit drawing, but I do think it's kind of crazy that it's there, and I just, you got to take it into account, okay? The other thing that we see here on the screen is a file folder that says Unknown Titan. So that seems to be a file folder on this new Titan that is coming to Earth to possibly invade. Now, it looks to me like they are hunting down the Titans. It seems to me that they're at the bare minimum tracking them, but it seems like they could definitely be hunting the Titans, similar to what we've heard in Monsterverse plot leaks. Then we see the emergency alert, right? That says status severe to report a Titan sighting, call 240 Monarch. Now, if you call that number, it's very interesting because it's actually 240-666-2724, which the 666 definitely signifies the apocalypse to me. I think it's very interesting, but I'm gonna let you guys listen to what it sounds like when you actually call this number.
Thank you for calling the Monarch Community Support Hotline, your global resource for Titan response and relief. Your help reporting Titan sightings plays a critical role in keeping our world safe. Please press 1 to receive text messages from the Monsterverse and to hear further options. Thank you for joining our efforts. Please pay attention to the following options. If you are calling to report a Titan sighting, please press 2. To hear general guidelines on what to do in the event of a Titan-related emergency, please press 3. To hear these options again, please remain on the line.
Titan-related events cannot be predicted, so it's important to stay vigilant, remain calm, and be ready. Here are some ways you can stay prepared in the event of a Titan-related emergency. Pay attention to and act quickly upon receiving text alerts. Titans are forces of nature that cannot be contained. They are unpredictable, massive in size, and incredibly dangerous. If you are in the vicinity of a Titan, please do not engage. Our highly trained response team is ready to help in any crisis that may arise. For your safety, please go to your nearest Titan shelter immediately. If you're not near a Titan shelter and require assistance, please save this phone number for future needs.
And then it hangs up. And of course, if you actually get the text messages, what it says is, thank you for contacting the Monarch Community Support Hotline. Join now for first access to Titan alerts. There's a link there for you to kind of follow a community and receive recurring automated messages, which I'm sure is going to factor into the marketing when this film eventually does start the marketing process. But as we move back through the trailer, we come to the title screen, which gives us our biggest hint and our biggest piece of information about what this plot contains by showing us the title of Supernova. Now, with the way that the red kind of radiates through the R here, I've heard a lot of people saying that this is hinting at Gigan. I'm not really sure if I believe that. I think we're definitely going the route of Space Godzilla, guys. But with Supernova being the title, I find it very interesting because we could potentially be looking at Godzilla going into like a supernova form. I could see that being why this is the title, but on top of that, also being a double entendre and teasing the fact that space is going to be heavily involved in this film. Now, with Supernova being the letters that we see at the bottom of the screen, you see them highlighted with a kind of fiery outline, which is the reason why I kind of think they could be teasing a supernova version or form for Godzilla, being a potential final form. Maybe we even see Godzilla melt down. I'm going to do a video discussing what that could potentially be in the Monsterverse. But in the background, we see a galaxy and a stars, which is our biggest indicator next to the title that what we're seeing here is in fact a space themed villain for this movie, and most likely going along with the pyramids and everything else we know about this movie, I think we're going towards Space Godzilla, guys. I gotta be honest. Maybe they do go the route of like retconning Zo's Lahawa and actually, you know, explaining that this was like a winged Godzilla that ended up going into space and is now returning to fight Godzilla. I don't know how they're gonna explain the origin of this creature. I don't think it's going to be the actual Toho version of the character brung into the Monsterverse. What I actually think it's going to be is the Monsterverse's version of a cosmic Space Godzilla-like villain. So comment down below, guys. Let me know what you think about this breakdown. Let me know what you think about all these theories that I'm discussing here, because I really think I'm onto something, and I think a lot of people are going to start figuring this stuff out as we approach the marketing of this film. We know that this stuff kind of happens fast. They probably have had a plot for a few months now, considering that they already greenlit this movie as soon as Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire came out. That means they were already circling the idea of it probably months before Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire even came out. So comment down below, guys. Let me know what you think about all of these scoops, and for this video, that is all I got. So until the next one, be safe and stay well. Bye-bye.